and also with you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him very closely. Just then, in front of him, there was a man who had dropsy. And Jesus asked the lawyers and the Pharisees, "Is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not?" But they were silent. So Jesus took the man and healed him and sent him away. Then Jesus said to them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately put him out on the Sabbath day? The Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath." And they could not reply to this. The Gospel inspired by God.
Praise to you.
A very strident and opinionated Prime Minister of England said famously in the 70s, "The law is the law is the law," indicating that there was no recourse, that was the ultimate authority was law. And of course she's talking about human law. Jesus Christ has a very, very different opinion about the law. So I want to talk about the law for a few minutes today. And I want to suggest that there are three different kinds of law. When we talk about law, there are actually three very different kinds of law. Firstly, there is the laws governing the physical universe in which we find ourselves, the scientific and mathematical laws. So there's a law like gravity, and there's a law in science, the conservation of energy, and there are mathematical laws. If you want to solve a quadratic equation, you've got to plug in x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So these are laws governing mathematics and science and the physical cosmos in which we find ourselves. And we can't take issue with these. They govern our existence. There's a second kind of law, and it's the law that governs the metaphysical universe. The laws that are responsible even for the physical one. They're the template behind the articulation of the physical cosmos itself. And these are laws like the law of karma, or the law of love, or the law of forgiveness, or the law of enlightenment through incarnation. And these are the primary laws that filter through and govern, or should govern, all human behavior. And then there's a third kind of law, and it's human law. Laws made up by human beings. And they either come from politicians, or they come from corporations, or they come from churches. And they break down into three subcategories in my experience. Human laws break down into three kinds of categories. There are good laws, like speed limits inside in towns, that you can't drive more than 30 miles an hour, through an urban area. That's a good law. And then there are bad laws, like the Patriot Act is a bad law. Or like a law that was in Guatemala years ago. The Bechtel Corporation of the United States had literally controlled the government of Guatemala. And they were totally in charge of the resources. And it was illegal in Guatemala to trap water from your own roof and drink it. So an ordinary person living in a little tin hut, whose only access to water was to trap the water from the roof of their own house, it was illegal, and they could be jailed for doing it. It's illegal in India at the moment for farmers to take seeds from last year's crops and try to sow it again now, courtesy of Monsanto and the Indian government. An Indian farmer could be jailed for attempting to take seeds from his own crop from last year and plant it again this year. So these are laws which are really, really bad laws. And then the third subcategory of human laws are dumb laws. They're just stupid laws. Like there's a law, I can't remember the town in Louisiana, in which it is illegal to sell peanuts on a Tuesday evening after 6 p.m. I kid you not. There's a town in Louisiana where it is illegal to sell peanuts on a Tuesday evening after 6 p.m. You can sell it any other evening after 6 p.m. and you can sell it on Tuesdays before 6 p.m. but you can't sell peanuts in this town after 6 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. I have no idea what the origin of that is. Joe, you know.
In Massachusetts, it's illegal to have a horse in your rowboat.
A horse in your rowboat. Brilliant, that's brilliant. It's illegal in Belmont to spit anywhere in the city except on the baseball diamond.
Belmont,
in Belmont, California. It is illegal in Carmel, California, or at least it was when, who was the dude that was Lord Mayor there for a while?
What?
Who was the dude that was Lord Mayor in Carmel for a while, the famous actor? Clint Eastwood. When Clint Eastwood was mayor of Carmel, it was illegal for a man to wear trousers and a jacket that didn't match in Carmel. Yeah. And it was illegal to eat ice cream on the sidewalk in Carmel at the same time. Cecile.
You know, we have that water rule here now.
Uh-huh.
You're not allowed to collect water.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Where? You're talking about California?
Everywhere. I mean, here in California.
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't collect water and safe to drink it.
Uh-huh. That's Jane.
Well, the reason that there's so many churches in Palo Alto
Uh-huh.
was dry.
Uh-huh.
On your deed of your house, you had to say you won't have alcohol.
You went to Valka. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. So we're looking at when it comes to human laws, there's these three categories. There's good ones, there's bad ones, and then there's really just dumb ones. So what is the purpose of human law? In my opinion, the only valid human law is when it is making it easier for people to live in love with each other and with all other life forms. Any human precept which is not about facilitating the loving interaction between human beings and all the other life species with which we share the planet is either a bad law or a dumb law. And this is what Jesus Christ is talking about this morning. All laws, any laws that human beings make, should be laws that help us to align ourselves with the law of love, the law of karma, the law of justice, the law of forgiveness. They're the only valid laws. But unfortunately, as I said last week, every single one of us has an ego, and the ego is operating according to a very different kind of law. The law of the ego is the law of just the organism. I suggested last week that every organism has two kinds of intelligence. There's the innate intelligence of the organism itself, and then there's the intelligence that comes in with the soul. And the intelligence of the soul is the intelligence of love and justice and mercy and forgiveness. And the intelligence of the organism is survival and grabbing the resources available. And every single one of us has these two kinds of intelligences within us. The law of the ego, wanting to grab and control and be in charge, and the law of the soul that wants to be loving. Now, it's the ego then that gets us in trouble. But there are two kinds of egos. There's the ego of the individual that tries to kind of hijack the individual enterprise. And there's the ego of the global oligarchy that tries to hijack the global enterprise. Planet Earth should be about the evolution of Christ consciousness. But there's a cabal in charge everywhere, whether they're church people or they're politicians or they're corporations who are trying to control others. And so it's the ego of the oligarchy that creates most of the problems. Paul said it very powerfully in his letter to the Romans one time, where he says, before there was law, there was no sin. And so sin in some senses is caused by law. Because if sin is the breaching of a precept or the breaking of a commandment, if you don't have commandments, then in some senses you don't have sin. I'm not saying there's going to be peace, but Paul is pointing out that is the creation of really bad laws that create sinners. And it's becoming more and more difficult in the United States of America and in other places not to be a criminal. There's a book out at the moment, I haven't read it, but I've heard about it, that claims that the average American commits 3 felonies every day. There are so many laws of which we are not aware that if the government chose to take a case against you, there's plenty of evidence that you're breaking the law on a serious level each day. You just don't know what the laws are, but there are so many of them, you're actually breaking them. So here's Jesus then contending against this movement in his time. That the ultimate law is the law of love. It is the law that we all come from God. And everything we do should facilitate that emergence. So the question we have to ask ourselves then, when we look at the laws governing human behavior, who is making these laws? Who is interpreting these laws? And who is enforcing these laws? And there should be 3 different groups of people. Those who make the laws should be different from those who interpret them, should be different from those who enforce them, but they're not. It's the same cabal, the same oligarchy, creating them, interpreting them, and enforcing them. And then you know you're in big trouble. So Christ consciousness is about the abolition of law in the sense that any laws which are not aligning us with God, which are not creating justice and equality and mercy and forgiveness, are bad law. Okay, fire guys. Cecile.
I love this idea of being to God, like
Okay.
an ox in a well.
Yes.
I thought it was really sweet. I mean, what's important about an ox,
Yes.
nerves. It's
Right.
like a gentle
Right.
creature.
Right.
And, that God would care about me
Okay.
that much that I'm,
Hmm.
I've fallen into this well of
Totally.
incarnation.
Totally.
I'm not working on that.
So obviously the alleviation of human suffering or animal suffering, is what law should be about. It should be about the protection of all life species so that nothing needs to suffer unnecessarily.
Because what's the impulse?
Yeah.
The impulse is to, help.
To reach out and to help. Absolutely. Mark.
Why shouldn't the people who create the law be the same that interpret the law?
Because I think the people who create the law, it's like the separation of the government within the United States, that there are three different parts to government. It's an effort to make sure that any one group doesn't get in charge of the whole enterprise. And so the more you can divide up the responsibilities of creating, interpreting and enforcing, the less opportunity there is for corrupting the system. If you've got three kinds of checks and balances within the system, there's less opportunity. But when they're all owned by corporation, then big problems emerge. Maureen.
In China, a woman was allowed to have only one child
Right,
now,
right.
as of yesterday.
Okay.
Now she
So
can
you can
have
have
two.
two. Interesting. Okay. And what's the thinking behind that? Do you imagine?
Well, population.
Okay. So why do they want to increase the population now? Do you think?
Well, because
It's begun going
going
down.
down,
Okay.
and so they want to build it back up.
Okay.
So now she can have two.
Okay.
They don't
Brilliant.
have enough women for the men.
Yeah, that's the.
What was the point, Margaret?
They don't have enough women for the men.
Interesting.
They were
Okay.
Killing all the girls.
You're killing all the girls.
Killing, yeah.
Yeah.
girls.
Killing
And
girls.
also that the population is getting older and they need
Yes.
workers to
Yes.
support
Mhm.
the
Okay.
population.
Okay.
It is
Because
getting-
their philosophy is that
Right.
families need to take care of them.
Right. Right. Brilliant. Jojo.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Margaret.
The law of love.
Uh-huh.
Isn't a law something, a law is a rule,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So how can you call love a rule?
A rule.
How can you say the law?
So part of the thing is that when we've taken the word law and it's now become a pejorative, a law now sounds like it's something bad that has been imposed upon us. But when you think about it, the law ultimately is how the system actually works. It's discovering the mechanics of how a system works. So that's the real meaning of law. So when I talk about cosmic law, like the law of gravity, it's not a law that somebody just made up and imposed it upon us. You can't overturn the law of gravity and make gravity illegal. You're still going to fall if you step off a ladder. And so the ultimate meaning, the real meaning of law is discovering the innate workings of any system. But we've hijacked the word law to mean, regulations that human beings make up. John.
It's sometimes called the difference between descriptive law and
Okay.
prescriptive law.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
The law of gravity is a descriptive law.
Yes.
The law to obey the speed limit is a prescriptive
Exactly.
law. Right.
Great distinction. So one is describing what the system is innately, and the other is, what we impose upon a community. Yeah.
Just a note in
Mark,
passing, in
okay.
Norwegian,
Ah.
there's a word for love,
Okay.
kjærlighet.
Okay.
The word for law is L-O-V,
Uh-huh. L-O-V.
love.
Okay. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Just
Yeah.
a weird
Yeah.
note.
So I came across this law reading the book of Deuteronomy a few days ago. I think it's around chapter 22. And according to this law of Deuteronomy, and this was imposed on the peoples of the Bible, if a virgin is raped by somebody, then the rapist the virgin has to marry him, and the rapist has to pay the father 150 shekels. How about that for law? How would that go down in modern America? That was the law. Yeah. Not only is she raped and kind of destroyed, but she has to marry the guy, and the father has to be paid 150 shekels because he's lost his property. So the woman's just property, and one guy has tarnished the father's property, and the father needs to be reimbursed, for the damage done to his property, and the girl then has to marry the rapist.
We need to get around that by blaming her and stoning her, and then
Yes.
no money has to change hands.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
This is another law. Okay.
We need laws. I mean, we need laws.
We need some way of regulating human interactions with each other. Yeah, but they should always be in alignment with cosmic laws and with metaphysical laws. If they're not in alignment with love and justice and mercy and compassion, what happens is an oligarchy takes over and they create laws, interpret laws and enforce laws for their own benefits, not for the people who are being governed, but for the people doing the governing. And so if you have enough money, there's a statement in American jurisprudence, if you can make the money, if you can pay the bail, you don't have to go to jail. It's the people who can't make the bail money that wind up inside in our prison systems. And we have the highest incarceration rates in the world, the United States of America. 2.3 million Americans incarcerated right now. Yeah.
And it's a business.
It's a business. It's a military, industrial, prison business.
But just think of all the people that would be unemployed. Right? I mean,
If what?
if all the people that would be unemployed if the prisons don't have all those.
They could be out building roads.
Exactly.
Are you serious, Margie?
Well, that's why they're keeping the system going. They keep the system going because everybody's afraid to lose their job. So from the jailer to the judge and to the
So what we need is,
the guy that's in jail right now.
so what we need is more prisons for the homeless and the unemployed.
No. But that's what I'm saying. That's why they're holding on to it because everybody wants to hold on to their job. From the judges to the bailiffs to the guys that
That's
bring the
that's
food
now
and
it's a profit-making venture.
It's a, yeah.
Profit-making venture.
It's going private at this
No
stage.
longer like that.
It's private industry at this stage. The prison system.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think even they should put people because they're smoking marijuana. Not that I smoke.
Okay. Oh, we know you're a pothead, Merce.
My sister had a rental. No, it was actually her house. Her house, and her kids had a plant of marijuana. And she was watering it. She didn't know. She was totally cool.
Did I know that?
My brother discovered what it is. I don't know how he discovered it. And he said, you've been watering the marijuana.
That plant. I've done that. It looks like a nice plant.
Good.
I just took that one in the year and I didn't know it.
Oh, me too.
So, Margaret, you could have wound up in jail for something from watering a plant that you thought was a flower. Okay.
I brought you a song.
Oh, good. All right, guys, let's stand and pray. God, our Father and our Mother, we thank you again this morning for the miracle of a brand new day in which we can attempt to be channels of love, of light and of logos, of life and of laughter, of wisdom and information for our planet and for our times. For this we pray to the Lord.
Amen.